as a subcontractor, I want to work with more general contractors on projects, commercial or residential projects. What would be the best way for me to approach you about wanting to work with you?
Welcome to Success Unleashed, Beyond the Job Site, the only podcast created to help contractors win in business and in life. And now your host, Gerritt Bake.
Welcome back to the Success Unleashed podcast. We got another special guest with us here today. I'm going to introduce him shortly. And yes, he is a redhead, but damn, does he make it look good. Chris Wilson is our guest today. Now, here's the cool thing about Chris. I'm going to give you a brief bio on him, and we're going to dive right into it. But Chris actually spent 18 years in construction prior to starting his own business. In 2020, he started Build Right Contractors. No, not on a full-time basis, but on a part-time basis. And part-time, in his first year in business, he did $800,000 in revenue. Here we are in 2024. He started another business called One Stop Contractors, or I should say Utah's One Stop Contractors, which we will talk a little bit about. But this last year, over $12 million in sales. So you'll want to pay attention to what Chris has to say about building a business. Odds are you're going to pick up a thing or two. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
Good.
All right, let's dive right into it. Most contractors, when they get into the business world, right, they usually either work for somebody else or, they decided from a young age that was the thing they were going to do. What got you interested in being a contractor?
I would say that the thing that got me the most interested in being a contractor is when I took a class at Salt Lake City Community College when I was still in high school. They were offering it. My mom worked for Salt Lake City Police Department, and they were offering this free class for anybody who wanted to go that was a member of the police department for their family. And so in high school, I decided to go check it out, but also at a young age, my dad, he worked in the fire alarm and security system industry. And so I was reading blueprints and looking at those with him. And my grandpa was an electrical engineer. And so just kind of always was interested in construction. And then my other grandpa built houses and, apartments and other things and had assets and real estate. And so I was interested in all of that stuff. But what really got me into it was just seeing the different dynamics of construction, how many different parts and pieces are in it, and where you could possibly make yourself fit in.
Wow. So a class. What was the class titled?
So this class was titled Construction Management. So a little bit of construction management there.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And so you were in high school, you take a construction management class, but you don't go right into construction.
No, I didn't go right into construction. So I ended up going into the fire alarm industry and moved down to California right before I went and served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I went down there and lived in San Diego and started to work in Temecula on some schools pulling wire for fire alarm systems and also for their, intercom system that they had there. So in the trenches doing that, and then worked on San Diego State University doing some stuff there. They have an underground tunnel. And so I was working off of a train car up high, drilling into the concrete, running wires, doing some stuff there. And then I ended up going on my mission and came back home and was like, hey, what am I going to do? So started working with my dad. We started a fire alarm company doing testing and inspections. So that was kind of, some fun stuff, but, kind of in construction, but not really 100% in what I wanted to do.
Okay. So you do that for a few years, but then you still didn't go right into construction. What was the next stop along the way?
Man, I did some car sales for a minute, about 6 months. And then after I did that, I decided to go and apply at Hexcel Corporation and, took a job on with them in the global projects team and built some carbon fiber lines with them. And so on that aspect, I was more of a project engineer, like making copies of the blueprints, looking over invoices, checking on the job, walking around, making sure people had their, personal protection equipment on, following OSHA rules and stuff. And so was kind of getting into it a little bit more. And then from there, I decided to go back into fire alarms. And so I went back into fire alarms and sprinklers, and not doing installs now, but I went into sales. And so I went into sales and, had 0 customers to taking care of over, thousands of locations, getting to know project managers, getting to know owners, developers, decision makers, people that would make decisions on building stuff, on who they're going to use for different services. And so I did that with 2 different companies for about another 8 years before I finally started to work for a big, large company called Rimrock Construction. And so...
So talk about that, right? This is a huge thing, right? And if you're listening or watching, I want you to pay attention to what he said. What made him successful, and I threw out a number, over $12 million in less than 4 years, okay? What made him successful has little to do with his construction knowledge, right? It has everything to do with his ability to manage people, manage process, and manage projects, right? So right now, if you're stuck in your business, it doesn't matter if you've been 2 years, 15 years, 25 years, and you're wondering, why am I not growing? Well, there's a clue, okay? And I actually want to dive a little bit deeper into this. What did you do for Rimrock?
So for Rimrock, I actually was a project manager. Okay. I got hired on to be a project manager. Funny story with Rimrock and how we met is I had a relationship with a developer and somebody who managed properties. And in building relationships with them, they had properties in multiple different states. We got to sit in front of the ownership group, in front of the decision makers, and we built that relationship up with them and ended up fixing problems that they had with their fire alarms and their fire sprinklers and their nurse call systems to the point where they trusted us. And when Rimrock had an issue where, unfortunately, they didn't let the state fire marshal know that they were building a nursing facility and have it inspected so that they could open, they went for their renewal. And that year mark, the state fire marshal said, no, I've never inspected this building before, so I'm not going to renew you to let more people come in after they leave that bed in the nursing facility. So Rimrock ended up meeting with me, and I met with them and the owners of the property, and we went through the whole dialogue. We ended up coming in and fixing the problem that was created by the original fire sprinkler company that installed the system, where unfortunately they didn't have trunk lines connected to sprinkler heads inside of units. They had, like the dope and stuff inside of sprinkler heads. And so we ended up having to replace a lot of sprinkler heads in that building, adding the trunk lines in, connecting everything, putting in expansion loops, redoing a lot of work on this property. And Rimrock, the owners there, asked me, hey, have you ever been interested in being a project manager? Well, of course I have, but nobody would give me the time of day as a project manager coming in with 0 to little experience in that field. But Rimrock decided to interview with me, give me an opportunity to talk to them and say, hey, here's a project. What do you do with this project? If you're building a hotel or an apartment from the ground up, what are the first things that you have to do? Well, they asked me that question and I looked at them and said, all right, do I have my permit? Do I have everything in place? Am I staking it? Do I need to grub it first? Then I stake it. Then I clear off everything on the property. And now all of a sudden I'm able to put in all of my underground utilities, do your hot taps, start putting in stuff for, your footings and your foundations. And, where most people that they were interviewing is, okay, you put in the concrete, then you start framing, then you do this. And I'm like going way further back on everything that you have to do to get to those steps that people were saying. So Rimrock said, okay, we're going to take a chance on you and hire you on. I took a massive pay cut, but I wanted the experience and I wanted to be able to go get my general contracting license because back in Utah, you had to go through 2 years of being underneath somebody with a B100 in order to qualify to become a general contractor at that point.
How many years did you work for Rimrock?
I worked for Rimrock a little over 3.5 years.
Wow.
Before I decided to go out.
Ton of experience. So again, I want to recap this for you guys. Okay. He has in 18 years prior to starting your own business, you worked everything from reading basic diagrams to running wires to selling projects to managing projects, and then now out on your own, right? That's not the normal path that a contractor takes. And I know you, as a general contractor, work with a lot of subcontractors on a day-to-day basis. There's some frustrating stories I'm sure we'll talk about. But why do you think that you are so successful so early? What would you attribute that to?
Relationships.
Okay.
Relationships with owners, builders, developers, being able to befriend people, talk to them, having the knowledge and the experience, being able to share that knowledge with people. Today I was out on an appointment doing a sales job for a basement finish, was able to talk to this lady and say, hey, I've finished over 600 basements now in my career, and here's what I would do with your space from the things that you've told me that you want to do. Here's how I would approach it. And so being able to dive in and communicate with the people that I'm trying to work with has been really key for us. And then being upfront and honest with people. I'd rather be the general contractor that says, here's all of this information, here's where I'm estimating your numbers to be, and instead of, yeah, I can do that job for this price, and then come back to you and say, hey, here's a change order, here's this, here's that for you. The price is now more expensive than what I originally quoted you because I wanted to get the job.
So important. Now, I want to combine those two things that you just talked about. You talked about, your ability to manage projects and relationships. There's a lot of contractors who are good salespeople, right? Salesmen. They can, sell ice to an Eskimo, which is great. But then they miss that second part of the business, which is doing the thing that you said you're going to do. Then there's contractors who are really good craftsmen, but they suck at selling, right? Mm-hmm. You've got these two backgrounds that kind of came together, right?
Yep.
How would you say that separates you from other contractors?
Man, that's a tough question because, like you said, there are so many people that are good at doing sales, and then there's people that are good at managing projects and seeing where everything is. I think with me being in sales and then having project management experience has been really key for the success that I have in my industry. Now, I'll tell you, I know how to manage jobs. I know how to work subcontractors. I know how to talk to them, how to talk to homeowners, being able to manage budgets, put schedules together, doing all these things. So, sometimes I would almost call those people who can do all of that a unicorn because it's hard to be able to find people who can do everything in one fell swoop. And, sometimes I feel like I may get frustrated with even people that I hire, because I'm like, why don't you understand this? Like, can't we do this? What's this? How can you work with them, on certain things? And so I have to pull myself back and say, okay, not everybody understands it because they've all had their different roles and they've all come from different sides of running in the industry. But I hope that answers the question for you.
No, it does. To follow up on that, what would you say your biggest frustration is when it comes to working with subcontractors? Now, I want to explain that a little bit before I have you answer it. If you're a general contractor, pay attention. If you're a subcontractor, pay attention, right? Because there's a particular way that you need to be working and functioning in order to make things work the way that they should, right? So what is your biggest frustration then when it comes to working with subcontractors?
When you say that you're going to be on the job site that day, be on the job site that day. Get the things done that you're saying you're going to get done. Tell me that you've ordered the material and that it's here when you tell me that you've ordered the material. Don't wait, because sometimes there's lead times, right? And so as far as like being the general contractor and scheduling out the subcontractors, it's like, hey, I will call them. We'll ask them, does this timeline fit your timeline? Does this fit within what you're having to wait for on materials? Does this work for you? Instead of being the general contractor that's putting out a schedule and telling the subs, you have to meet this date. we'll actually reach out to our subs and talk to them and say, hey, does this work for you? Does this work for you? How can we make it work if it doesn't work? But the biggest thing for me is if a sub's going to tell me that they're going to be on a job site and that something is going to be done, I expect that follow through. Or if it's not going to happen, because, we went through COVID, right? If it's not going to happen and there's delays in materials or whatever, open, honest communication is what I want, and the follow through that comes with it. Don't just tell me, yeah, it's going to be here on this day. And then if it's not, I'm going to call you and ask you, where is it? What's going on? Why isn't it there? Because you push back everybody else that's coming behind you. And then as a subcontractor, like you said before, having other companies, we have subcontracting companies. And so it's, one of those things with me, with my division managers is, hey, I'd rather you tell the general contractor, no, it's not going to be here, give you an extra week, and then come in 4 or 5 days sooner and let the contractor know, hey, we have that material, we're ready to install it whenever you're ready. Let me know what day works best for you. And I'd rather have more leeway.
So it sounds like there's two things that you mentioned, one being communication and the second one under the category of project management, right? The ability to manage a project. Now, as a subcontractor looking to work with a general contractor, if I can't do those things, what's the likelihood of me continuing to work with you?
With my company, very slim. I'm not about price. I'm about building relationships with our subcontractors and then having the open, honest communication.
I love that. Now, we've talked about this before, but I want you to hear it from a general contractor's perspective, okay? I'm going to ask the question. You're going to hear it answered slightly different. You hire me to install windows on a hotel. You ask me for my bid. I give you my bid. My bid's super low compared to everyone else. And so you in the back of your mind think he's missing something, right?
Correct.
You check with me. I'm like, no, I have everything that I need. Okay. So you accept the bid, you get the project, then off we go. I find out that, for example, I didn't budget for a lift. And now I've got a problem. Okay. What would you expect the subcontractor to do at that moment?
That's hard because I feel for the subcontractor for missing that, right? But as the general contractor, it's not my responsibility because you told me that you had everything. And if you're a window installer, you should know that you have to have a lift in order to get it up onto that building. I'll give you, for instance, we had a project in Wichita, Kansas that we did last year. And doing that hotel, we had a paint contractor who gave us a number, and we had 2 other bids, and we presented these numbers to the owner, and we had double verified everything with this sub, everything. And, the subcontractor said that they had everything in there. And so we moved forward with the sub. Well, the subcontractor came back to us and said, hey, I only have a lift that is 60 feet and I can't get up any higher and I need a 90 foot. And so is there anything that you can do to help me out? And I said, well, according to your contract, you have all labor, materials, and equipment to perform your task that we're hiring you for, which is painting and caulking all of the windows. And so unfortunately, I can't help you, but what I can do is I will go talk to the owner and explain to him that, hey, between all of these bids, you saved $40,000 and this subcontractor missed this lift size and he's asking for $4,000 in help. Do you want to help this subcontractor or are you going to make him eat it? And the owner said, I think we can help him because he did help us with the cost savings. So things like that, where I can go to an owner and explain stuff, happen sometimes, but you can also get owners that are like, sorry, you gave me a bid and I expect a full turnkey. to be taken care of. And then, it's left up to us as the general contractor of like, hey, do I want to split it with you and pay you a little bit extra and help you out? Or do I have somebody else on site that has a lift and can say, hey, if you, instead of only having it for the 3 weeks, I know that you can get it for another week for no extra money. Can you help me out? And I'll give you an extra $500 or something, And so there's ways that you can also work that, but it also depends on if there's already something there.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. I love the example. And you brought up 2 points, right? The first one, and I love this, it is not your responsibility. Like if you're a subcontractor, it is your responsibility, labor, materials, equipment. It is your responsibility. They are asking for your bid. You're the professional, so you should know your numbers. Now, the other thing, this is what I love about you, is you're more than willing to bend over backwards and try and find a solution that's mutually beneficial, right? You're not out to screw anyone, which is great. But let me ask you this. If I was that same subcontractor and ahead of time, I was struggling with my bid because I didn't know the exact equipment that I might need on this job, would you as the general contractor sit down with me and have that conversation and make sure that I understood exactly what I would need for that job?
For the most part, if we're looking at it and we have 3 different bids and there's a huge discrepancy, those are points that we will ask and say, hey, do you have the size of a lift? Going back to Wichita, Kansas, I had told the guy, hey, this is the size of lift I would incorporate to it would be a 120-foot boom. So that way I know I can get around everything on the entire property, even though it was going to cost a couple of extra $1,000. And, that's when he came out and met with us on site. And we had told him that. Well, he didn't listen. And so, that's on him. But, to answer that a little bit more in detail, no, it's not my responsibility, again, to make sure that you have everything because I'm hiring somebody who's a professional to do that. I'm a professional as a general contractor in managing a project and bringing all of these trades together to get the project done and to get it done within the time frame that we need and within the budget that we need.
Yeah, great response. Now, as a whole, would you say that general contractors are more than willing to help subcontractors if they have questions about, again, equipment or material, things like that? Like if I came to you and I'm like, hey, I'm not really sure what I need here, would you be willing to just say, hey, look, if I was bidding this job, I'd probably look at a 120-foot boom, for example?
Yeah, I would be more than willing to help out somebody and that. But I'm not going to know if it's a painting contractor. I'm not going to know how many gallons of paint you're going to need or how much it's going to soak in on stuff.
Yeah. So understand this. Again, it's not the general contractor's responsibility. It's yours. But they are willing to help you out. Like if you have trouble reading plans, for example, you're still new to the game, ask for help, right? If you're not sure what size of boom that you might need for a project, ask for help, right? Material and labor, hey, that's on you, man. Like you got to figure that one out. But understand that people don't want you to fail as a contractor. They want you to succeed. In fact, they want to be long-term partners with you because it's a whole lot easier to keep someone than to find somebody new, right?
So much.
But as a contractor, and this is the point you need to understand, you're the owner. It's your responsibility, right? How you show up to a job site is your responsibility. I know we were talking about this, before we started recording about one of your subcontractors and how they showed up to the job. And now how it might cost you not just 1 or 2 jobs, it might cost you the opportunity to work with this particular company forever.
Yep. Yeah. Very disheartening, very discouraging on some things because I really like this company and I've worked with them on multiple projects. And, it's very hard because now I have to go have the hard conversation with them because on this particular property, you get 3 strikes and you're done. And just on this one subcontractor on one job had 2. And I have other projects that I'm going to be looking at doing at this particular property. Yeah. And now it's heart-wrenching.
It's heart-wrenching, but it's also frustrating, right? Yeah. What do you think, what are your thoughts on the concept of own it? Like when you as a subcontractor walked onto a job site, like you're the owner of that job site. versus I'm here working for somebody else. What do you think about that concept?
I will agree with that concept 100%. 100%. Because it's your responsibility in whatever profession and whatever field you're dialing your trade into to take responsibility for what you're doing. Now, granted, you may have somebody who messes up something of yours, and that's when you go talk to the general contractor, and some people view that as tattletelling, but at the same time, hey, if somebody really messed up something of yours, that's not right. You need to be made whole for it, and then that's our responsibility as the general contractor to work with you and become, the mediator and make you whole on something that was ruined or destroyed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you, as a subcontractor, I want to work with more general contractors on projects, commercial or residential projects. What would be the best way for me to approach you about wanting to work with you?
I have a lot of people that approach me and a lot of people that ask me how they can work with us. My biggest response to everybody is I have an information sheet that we send out. And in that information sheet, we're asking how many years have you been in business? What's the name of the company? What's your dollar value that you've, made in the last year? When and what are your specialties? And then from there, once we get that information back, then we're going to send out a master subcontractor agreement that's going to detail, here's our contract, here's when we pay you, here's what your responsibilities are. You're responsible for checking the plans. You're responsible for providing all the materials, the equipment, the labor. You're responsible for X, Y, and Z. Like if you start working on a substrate or a surface that you don't agree with or your materials are not going to work with, don't start. Let us know that there's an issue before you start, because if you start, you're taking on the liability now. I'm not responsible for it. And if it looks like crap, I'm going to call you out on it. Well, they'd messed it up. Okay, well, you had an opportunity per your contract to let me know so I could get them to fix their problem. And they didn't fix their problem. So now, sorry, that's your problem. So we deal with the MSA, get back all of the information, licensing, insurances, make sure that everything is, kosher with you as a company. And then from there, we'll ask you, what projects have you done? Let's see some work. Can we call some referrals, some references, people that you've worked with, see how you do. And then from there, we're able to start working with you. So we kind of have a grueling process that we put some people through, just because I don't want bad work, because that's my name out there.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And it's super in depth, right? And I want you to see this. What Chris is doing is not disqualifying people. He's actually making them disqualify themselves, right? Their inability to follow up, their inability to fill out paperwork, the inability to, sign a contract, the inability to understand how to read a set of plans. Like, you're going to disqualify yourself, right? So, and a lot of contractors do this. There's no shortage of opportunities for you. Like, have you ever just flat out told somebody no?
No.
You always give them an opportunity.
Right.
But you put the ball in their court and say, cool, if you want this thing, here's the 5 or 6 things you need to do. And most people don't do it.
Yep. I mean, very specific, detailed. We spent, a couple of hours putting a sheet together that's 2 pages long of step by step. Here's everything that I need. I need you to break it out into 2 separate emails. So it has this information in one, this information in another, and here you go. Send it in. If you don't want to send it in an email, or you can't, come into our office, bring all of your paperwork, and our assistant will sit down with you, make sure that you have everything, and then we'll read through the contract on our side, make sure that you haven't crossed out anything or wanting to change anything in the contract. And if we can agree to those terms, and we can agree with, if I have people that cross things out in our contracts, that's fine. If I can live with it and agree to it, then I'll accept it, and then we can move forward with it. But if I don't agree to it, then we can't come to an agreement, then we can't work together, because it has to be beneficial for both sides.
Amen. So true. All right. It's funny or maybe not funny question. Worst experience you've ever had with a subcontractor?
Oh, geez. Worst experience that I have ever had with a subcontractor. I can tell you plenty with homeowners. Man. I have to say that I had a subcontractor on a hotel that I built up in Logan, Utah when I was working for Rimrock, that we had steel that was set, and then we had framing that came in. And in a transition area, we had the floor was out in a 5-foot area of almost 1.25 inches. And so as you're transitioning that, how do you make it work? So now I'm like, okay, well, who do I blame? The steel erector or the framer? And then by the time you start digging into everything, then you start finding out that it's actually the concrete people because the concrete was off. And then once I noticed that and we started to progress on the building, now I had to stick frame the hotel on the whole entire first floor to get it to the right elevation. And so when I started dealing with this concrete company, like that was the first subcontractor that I ever fired off of a job, and that I never allowed the opportunity to fix anything, and that we held money on when I worked at Rimrock and kept it to be able to pay for the stick framing that had to happen, and then to pay for the issue of it being off that large amount in order to cover the gypcrete side of things. And so, like the concrete was it was horrible. It was wavy. It was going like this. And, like to stick frame everything on that hotel was almost an extra $15,000.
Wow.
And so, then I found another subcontractor that came out and finished the rest of the concrete work that had to happen on the exterior outside of the footing and foundation. And so, yeah, that was probably the worst one.
That's crazy. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about, subcontractors. As far as a general contractor, what would you say has led to your success? Like, there's a lot of general contractors out there. And in fact, I talked to one yesterday, and it was funny because in the message that he said to me, he's like, I'm looking to stay small because I want to figure some things out first. And I'm like, I think by growing is when you figure things out, but I may be wrong. So what has led to your success as a general contractor? What would you say?
See, and I still don't think I'm very successful. That's just me.
Fair enough.
But I think that for where I am today and what I have learned was getting knowledge and experience. And, it may sound rude, but on other people's dimes. But at the same time, I'm still learning on my own dime.
Yeah.
I made a mistake. I think I told you about this. I made a mistake on a hotel. I didn't do my follow through with one of my subcontractors on what the color of the exterior stucco on this re-stucco was going to be. I didn't do my follow through. Now it's costing me $25,000 to go back and repaint this hotel. And so, like learning and growing from mistakes is always going to be there. Maybe small dollar amounts, maybe large dollar amounts, but you're always going to learn and grow from them. And so I think that for me, of becoming a successful general contractor is, like just diving into it, going all in and taking the risks and the liability and everything that comes with it, and knowing that you're not going to win every job. You're not going to win every client over. You're going to have problems. There's going to be mistakes that you make, that your subs make. And so it's how do you overcome those? How do you bounce back from those? What are you going to do different? What are you going to put in place to make sure that you don't end up doing that again?
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. What would you say is the most important trait to possess as a contractor?
For me, it's honesty. I want to be honest with my customers. I want to be honest with my subcontractors. And, like following through, like I've said along this whole time, is if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't do something, say, hey, I don't know that answer, or I can't do that, so I don't feel comfortable with it. I may know a couple of other people, and I'll introduce you to them.
Yeah, that's such a powerful thing, right? And I love it because it's like you're not the solution for everybody's problem. and that's okay, right? And your willingness to tell them that up front, right, goes a long way, you know? As we're kind of wrapping things up here, I want to ask 2 more questions. They're not related questions, but I do have a couple more questions. The first one, what do you think about AI in construction? Do you think that over the next 5-10 years that AI and automation is going to take over the industry, or do you think this is like a 40 or 50 year thing?
Which side of AI?
So we talk about the ability to run aspects of projects without it all being humans doing it.
Oh, that you're a long ways away from that.
Why would you say that is?
Let's go back to another hotel that I built, for instance. AI probably wouldn't have caught that you have a 5-foot deck that you're doing on this hotel for a balcony, and I have to have a 5-foot radius for handicap for ADA. And so this deck was only at 5 feet out for the framing. Well, I had full stack brick on one side, which how thick is that? And then I had a handrail on another side. So how is AI going to catch something of dimensions like that? Then on the same deck, you're going back in and you're 10 feet across on the front, but you're coming back into a triangle with it. So you're cantilevering out 6 feet, but you're only coming back 18 inches. Then you're getting into 2.5 feet to 4 feet until you get back 16 feet. Well, you have to take your hangers, turn them upside down, do all this other stuff. And so it's trying to catch these things as the general contractor and working on that. I mean, I'm seeing videos on TikTok and other places of, like this machine going out and putting up drywall and then, like scraping it and making it look nice and everything. Yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be some stuff in the near future where, that will be able to happen. But I don't think it's going to take over every aspect or even, maybe not even 20% over the next 30 years, because you still have to have the human involvement to be able to catch problems and see things that are going to happen.
Yeah, I like that. It's the ability to problem solve on the fly. And really, this entire conversation has been around problem solving. So I know you said honesty, but I think problem solving is right there with honesty as far as the success that you're going to have as a contractor. Okay, last question. You're starting over. You got $1,000.
Okay.
You don't have any of your contacts, trucks, nothing like that. You're not living on the street, so it's nothing crazy like that. Right. You got $1,000 though, and you're starting over. What are you doing with that $1,000?
Man, I don't even know that one. What would I do if I had $1,000 and I was starting over and I'm staying in the construction industry?
Yep.
Right?
We're not going to Vegas, bro.
Okay. No Vegas. No Vegas. If I was starting back in the construction industry, what would I do? I would find one specific trade that I could really hone in on and do. What skill sets do I have? Can I do anything?
You can do anything.
All right, man. I would honestly take that $1,000 and I would go invest in myself and do tile work.
There it is.
And the reason I would do tile work, so everybody knows, is that there's a huge shortage on tile artists, people who understand and know how to set tile. And, for the people that I work with or the people that I call, they're 3 months booked out.
Wow. That's crazy.
So I would invest in myself to learn how to do tile.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, I appreciate you being here, Chris, and sharing your story and really more than anything, sharing your knowledge about, being a general contractor, but how these subcontractors can succeed, right? Because in the end, like you were saying, we want mutually beneficial relationships. We want everybody to win. You want a crew of subcontractors that can help you continue to grow as they grow as well, right? So if you're a subcontractor and you want to work with more general contractors, number one, make honesty part of your game. Most important. Number two, if you don't know, it's okay not to know, but ask the question, right? And then number three, you got to get good at solving problems, because it's not that they might randomly appear. It's that wait for them to appear because they're coming. All right, that's all we got for you guys. You know what time it is. It's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go. Thanks for listening to the Success Unleashed podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Until we see you again, it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.